Welcome to Centre Court with thanks to OMF. Kick back and relax with an adjustable bed from Australian designed and owned OMF. Watch sport your way. And Cobram Estate, Australia's most awarded extra virgin olive oil, grown, harvested and first cold pressed in northern Victoria. I'm Bianca Chaplin, and for Centre Court, of course, my co-host Maddie Brown is here. Round 8 is done, Maddie. It's good to have my voice back so you don't all have to hear me screeching like you did last week. What did you make of round 8?
Oh, I mean, I can't believe that we're nearly, that second half of the season is we're in it, and it's like, oh my goodness, the ladder's really starting to take shape. There's teams that are making some really maybe uncharacteristic errors, and games being won and lost where you can't even pick it at the moment. So it's right open.
Well, let's take a look at the OMF overview. Watch sport your way. To the actual results of round 8, there were some interesting ones. It all got started with the Vixens and the Giants. Pretty convincing win by the Vixens in the end. They didn't seem to struggle too much up against the Giants.
No, but then you go up to the sunny coast and the Fever and the Lightning. It was just a tassel of on and off, different lead changes, but the Fever too strong in the end, and it really only came down to one quarter.
And then the Firebirds and the Thunderbirds. What a huge upset it was. The Queensland Firebirds, we thought they were going to hang down the bottom of the ladder, but they bought their best and were able to topple the Adelaide Thunderbirds.
And the Mavericks get their first home win in front of their fans. It was very, very exciting. And, once again, as I said, the ladder is completely open and, anyone can kind of tussle in for that 4th spot now.
Oh, I'm excited to see what happens. And we're also excited for our next guest. We are really happy to be able to have Sharon Kelly. Now, Sharon's the Netball Australia head coach of Performance Umpiring. Sharon, thank you so much for joining us. Now, you had to umpire both Maddie and I. What were we like to umpire firstly?
You're perfect. Always perfect.
That is not true at all.
Okay, let's just screen grab that. We're going to keep that for the records. But you are in Singapore at the moment, Sharon. What's happening over in Singapore?
The Asian umpires camp's on at the moment, which is a 4-day camp where they bring in umpires from all over the different Asian countries. So we have Bahrain, we have Malaysia, Sri Lanka, Brunei, Singapore. So we've got 28 umpires in here who we've just been doing some education around rules and then games of a night time on court, assessing and improving their skills so they can take it back to their countries and pass it down the line. So it's really exciting.
Are you doing any recruiting for SSN whilst you're over there, seeing any new hidden gems and talent?
Not quite.
It's more for World Netball.
We might see some good ones at Pacific Games next week. So, yeah, it'd be great.
Sharon, we thought it'd be interesting to find out from you what the process is for umpires week in, week out in Suncorp Super Netball around when they umpire a game. Do you sit with them and review the game? How does that process work for all umpires? We know with players there's so much performance analysis that goes on. Is that the same for the umpires week in, week out?
Yeah, it is. And we've certainly built, in the last couple of years, we have our own performance analysts that we've had invested in who codes each and every one of the games, the umpire's decisions, be that a whistle, be it advantage. We also track some obvious errors that might be made, so ones that are definable like a held ball or an out of court that may have been missed. And all of that goes back to the umpires by Sunday night. Usually they get their reports back and then they sit with their video footage and go through and assess. And they can pick up, it's all coded by players and with positions. So we can pick up that they may have pulled a lot of obstruction outside the circle. Well, why is that? Where are they? Where are they positioned when they're pulling these things? And are they correct decisions? So they then go through that and work hard. They're given verbal and written feedback after each game from the umpire coach that's at the game. And then once they've done their own review with that performance report, they can then link back in with the umpire coach who is at the game. I meet with each of them each and every week for about half hour via Zoom, and because they're all over the world, all over the country. I mean, so we meet up once a week individually, and just talk through anything that's going on, where they're looking at for the future, what they're doing for the next week, what little tweaks they need to make in their performance for the next week. So, yeah, they work hard.
That's such good insight, because I don't think we understand all of the work that goes in behind. Because the other thing is, a lot of these umpires, this is a hobby. It's not their full-time job. So they're working, you know, a full week as well, and then doing this. Talk us through, Sharon, what we could do, or what the clubs could potentially do in assisting them, because they get this information, but then where do they put it into practice? Because it's all good and well, you know, umpiring state league, but it's not the same intensity as SSN. So is there anything clubs or teams could do to kind of help progress their learnings and their understandings of the game?
Yeah, a good point, Maddie, because after they've done that, they need to then do some practicing before the next week. And they usually do umpire into their Premier Leagues or their state leagues. But they also get invited into the SSN training sessions. The unfortunate part about that is they're quite often during the day, and every single one of our umpires have a full-time job, and some of them quite high pressure jobs. We have lawyers, we have teachers, so they can't get that time off in the middle of the day to go to trainings. So probably the simple answer is, could they train after hours that the umpires might be able to get into? But I know that's these teams are professional teams, and that's the better time for them to train. So it's a bit of give and take, I suppose, that we're going to have to come up to a bit of an agreement of when they can. But every opportunity that they can get into a training session, they will. So.
And I think behind the scenes, like, clubs and umpires have quite a good relationship too. There's a lot of, through the Diamonds, through all the club teams. Yeah, it's always been such a close-knit relationship between the umpires and the players. So it's always such a benefit to have them there at training with you, so you can have a bit of banter as well as, learn too why you're getting called for things.
Exactly, and you get to know the person a little bit better, and why these training environments absolutely paramount for an umpire's development, because you get to learn how players can move, what they can do legally, what different body movements may cause a contact, may not. And so, it's so important to get into those trainings. The coaches or the franchises, they all have the ability to speak to me during the week as well if they've got any queries, if they're concerned about a penalty count, if they don't understand what a player's been pulled for. And coaches also have the ability to go in post-match and have a discussion with umpires around that. So we do have a very open communication in that way. So
actually, and just on that, because I know in commentary for Fox Netball, like, we're always watching stats all the time, and we see the enormous penalty count that we have seen in this first half of the season. Is that something that you've been looking at with the umpires behind the scenes as well, and potentially talking to the coaches about? And how do you help them try and reduce that penalty count?
Yeah, so I suppose we do look at penalty count, and we say, well, that was higher, and then we break it down to players and then areas of court that they may have been called for, and then we will have discussions with teams if there's a particular player and what they might be doing, whether their angle's wrong in their obstruction, whether it's a movement that they're making prior to the ball getting there, that they're getting pulled up for their contact, and then similarly, we go back to the umpires and talk about their techniques around when they see the infringement and where they may have seen it from, what their positioning. I mean, the umpiring is really about their techniques of their positioning, their vision and their timing. And if they're not in the right position and looking at the things at the right time, then they're not going to call the right decisions. They're going to see reactions rather than the first action. So it's a bit complex in all that, but continue to work with teams, with umpires, to try and get it as correct as we can. So
now, Sharon, advancements in the game continue to happen in a lot of different codes. Where do you see we could learn from maybe other sports and bring it in? Because I think, a lot of people think, we should be having video and we should be having this and we should have all of this, but there's quite a process that has to happen for these decisions to be made. Where do you see the game could go, or talk us through the process that has to happen for these things?
Yeah, well, I mean, there is so much technology out there, and is it good for the game? Is it good for the flow of the game? I mean, everyone has their own opinion on that. but the Netball Australia do have a rules of the game, SSM rules of the game committee, and they take all of those sorts of things into consideration. On that committee, there is staff members, there are coaches, there are umpires, there are high performance managers, there are players, and everybody has a really nice open discussion about what might be available, where does that leave the game, what integrity part of the game would that question. So those conversations are had time and time again. We meetings all the time around that. So everybody calm down.
Yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there. Yeah, leave it to the powers that be.
We'll get there. Yeah.
Well, we are past the halfway point of the season. We know at the start of this season there was new game management rules that were brought into play, and that's obviously players being sent off. We've seen it once so far in SSN. Other leagues around the world, in New Zealand, they're seeing it more often. How have you seen the players and everybody respond, I think, to the new rules? And obviously we've had one send-off. Can you see more happening in the second half of the season?
So answer the last question first.
Yeah, okay,
Hope not. Yes.
I hope not. So we reviewed and we continue to review and enhance that skill of determining what is dangerous and what isn't. And we all agree that the player's safety is the paramount consideration. Those decisions are made at speed, and we continue working on developing the skill of making that decision at speed and taking into account everything that's happened. There's different styles, and as both of you would know, having played internationally, different styles of play played in different regions. And whilst the predominant Netball Australia, the Australian way of playing is man on man, that we usually will have two players going up together contesting equally from the same space. So we don't have a lot of run out, take players out of and put them in a dangerous position. So I think that's great. I mean, our players are so athletic. They train so hard, as do our umpires, on their skills. And we want them to be able to compete for the ball. We don't want it to be just an attacker's game.
Great idea.
But it is about equality for both players. And, two strong athletic players going up for a ball together is probably not going to be as dangerous as a player running through and another player not sighting that players coming and then having to protect themselves. So I give great credit to our players. I think they're making some really good choices of what to go for, when to go for it and where to go for it in that contest of the ball. So I think they've done a great job, and I think we've done a great job from the beginning of the season, where we went into each of the states and spoke to the teams, spoke to all the players, had really good open conversation about that. But as I said, we'll continue to review and assess on each and every decision that's made and the action that's made as to whether that is dangerous or not. So.
Well, it certainly is one of the toughest jobs out there, I think, being able to umpire at the elite level here in Australia, with the athleticism out there on court, the speed, the power. It's just gone to the next level this season. And Sharon, we thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you joining us, and we look forward to having you on centre court again sometime.
You're really welcome. Have a great day.
Let's take a look at the ladder as it is after round 8, and you can see the West Coast Fever and the Vixens currently sit on equal wins. They hold those two positions up the top of the ladder. The Thunderbirds had their chance, but now they're sitting 2 games below them. And the Giants, Firebirds, Mavericks, Swifts and Lightning, I'm going to put all those teams in one category, because really it's going to be a big, hard-fought fight home for all of them.
Absolutely, and the best part is we've still got a lot of netball to be played, and a lot of those teams fighting for the same spot have still got to play each other. And, this week, multiple games could see people either go further ahead or really bring that cluster a little bit closer together. So I think, early days we were thinking, oh, no, it's going to be a real top 4 and a bottom 4. But this is the beauty of our sport and the beauty of our league, that it just shows that anything can happen on any given day.
Well, that was the OMF overview. Kick back and relax with an adjustable bed from Australian Design and owned OMF. Watch sport your way. Time for the good oil, thanks to Cobram Estate, Australian extra virgin olive oil. And joining us again is SEN Netball commentator Hannah Kuhar. Hannah, welcome.
Thank you for having me in studio.
What is the good oil that you've got for us this week?
So, of course, round 8 of the SSN competition occurred, but also the first round of the new reserves competition. So, I just want to set the scene for you ladies before I ask you a question. First game of the round, the Vixens and the Giants, John Cain Arena, 5 p.m. on Saturday. It was clear over lunchtime that Jo Harten was falling ill. She thought, I'd rest it off, see how I go. She was ruled out not to play. Q training partner Kelly Singleton, she comes into the side. She suits up, albeit Julie Fitzgerald doesn't put her on the court. Giants reserves go on to lose by 7 goals against Fury. Also happening on Saturday afternoon, after the success of the captain's run on Friday afternoon for the Swifts, it appears that Sam Wallace-Joseph doesn't turn up to Sydney Airport and instead Grace White is pulled into the side, the young goaler. The Swifts end up playing 11 a.m. against the Fury. They travelled with 10 players, goes down to 9. They've got 2 on the bench against the Fury's 5, and they go on just to beat Fury on the buzzer, 1-goal win. Given that we're coming to the middle point of the season, we're seeing so many injuries, players, we're not knowing the length of these injuries due to the lack of transparency in the league around who's injured, how long it's for. I want to ask you the question, is it finally time to look at increasing squad lists or even travelling squad lists? Because as I understand it, Netball Australia doesn't pay for additional players to travel. They may travel, but it's at the cost of the club. Is it time that that changes?
Oh, I'm a hell yes. Yes, it is. Like, I think we have to, and I've talked about this before, like going back to the squad of 16, and you might pick a team of 12 and you know, 10 are obviously on the bench, but you have those 2 just there. They are obviously paid maybe per match. And obviously, you know, with the reserves there, just luck of the draw that they actually had people to draw on, because how are you flying someone in at lunchtime when your game's about to happen? So I think yes, and I think it's only going to help develop some of those youngsters, because we do look at obviously the wider the league and go, where are we going to find goal attacks, goal defenders? Where are they? Because we've got so many imports.
Yeah, that's very true. I agree. I think we need even this reserves team when, you know, it's a pilot at the moment, this competition, so it goes for 5 weeks. Is there a way that can continue on and travel around with the Super Netball teams? And that, I know there's a lot of costs involved in that, and that's not something that we're privy to, the financial side of it. I think we need it, and with the Jo Harten incident with the Giants as well, I thought that was interesting because we got the team list before the broadcast and Jo Harten was in there starting 7. So it was only literally a couple of hours before, or even an hour before the game, that then she was ruled out. And Julie Fitzgerald said Kelly Singleton was in the hotel. That is why they could grab her for that, to be able to actually have enough players. Otherwise, they would have been 1 down. So I definitely think we need to have more reserves. I think if you're a training partner, it is a really hard position to be in because you are getting pulled between your state league team. You want to obviously get as much experience as you can to develop your game. You're not rewarded or remunerated financially as well as everybody else, and so you are constantly being pulled everywhere. It's a tricky position for them to be in if they're always travelling with the teams and not necessarily getting the same amount of court time or development of their game.
And you see the difficulty in those plays that you speak of. If you're a training partner for a few years in a row, you look at someone like a Shani Lambden. She's been on the cusp for so long, but starting to turn down opportunities because they're getting frustrated at how the system is set up, and there's just not enough opportunity for those players. I mean, you look to overseas competitions, the ANZ Premiership, they have 6 teams of 10 players. The NSL in its current form, 10 teams of 12 players, albeit moving to the Australian model of 10 players amongst 8 teams. It's just getting harder and harder to find these contracts. But I think given the rise of all of these football codes, which we know pose a real threat to the future of netball, I think we're not in a position to be turning down players and keeping them at arm's length. And especially, I mean, it's not even just a financial decision. We understand Netball Australia's in a hard position. But I actually reckon let's look at the quality of play, because that's what we want to see, a vibrant product. Of the 32 matches we've seen in the SSN so far, 37 teams have used the 10 players or more, that full contingent. And if you exclude the Vixens who love playing that starting 7, only 8 sides have fielded a team. So of the remaining 7 teams, they've used 7 or 8 players on 8 occasions. So it just goes to show that there is a real appetite, because coaches love having options at their disposal. And when we want the game to be quicker and faster and full of excitement, you want players who are feeling fresh and revitalised. And I think a full bench does that.
Yeah, and even if you're getting on for a couple of minutes, the rolling subs allow that now to go out there, have a crack, come off, feel the intensity of SSN, come off, reflect on it, maybe move positions. But I think that's a luxury we have now in our game with the way the rules are. And so the more players we can get through the system, the better it's only going to be for the Diamonds.
But the 10 was because of the 1-point netball, and we didn't have the super shot, and we obviously didn't have the rolling subs and things like that. But I think I agree. We've got that room now to maybe go for the 12, or at least have some emergencies just sitting there.
I don't mind the 11th player. I don't mind how that's been activated. Obviously, that's a choice of the clubs if they can do that, and because they have to then pay.
And Giants, funny enough, Giants haven't named an 11th player. So funny to find them in that awkward position going, oh, we don't have one. Well, if you had an 11th player that maybe travelled, maybe it wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
Of course, with the utilisation of the 11th player, it's kind of like choosing a squad of 10 from 11. So it's not even though if a team has an 11th, they necessarily get to go on the court, but it just adds that element of flexibility. As you've mentioned, with the 2-point shot, teams really like having a tall goaler who's good for a 1, but then someone who can come on as an impact player for a 2. Is it better and more entertaining for the game if we want these shootout matches to have someone who's pretty much a consistent 2-point shooter? They can sit on the bench but still have other options in a larger squad.
And you talk about that 11th player, or, you know, a squad of 11 and 10 can be picked. You mentioned, obviously, Wallace Joseph. Now, she was omitted. And you said that she just didn't rock up to the airport. Do we know any more information about that, or what's happened? What's your take on it, Han?
It's the question on everyone's lips at the moment, to be honest. I understand the Swifts are being quite tight-lipped about it. So, yeah, we're not privy to talk about any further queries on that one. As I understand, she just didn't turn up to the airport. I don't know the backstory behind that.
And,
after a captain's run.
Yeah, after turning up to captain's run.
Bryony Akel, like that shocked me just at the start of the game when I thought Sam Wallace-Joseph was out injured, and straight away Bryony owned it, said no, like she's been omitted. And so interesting. We'll leave you, Hannah, to go and get all the information on what's been happening. Well, that was the good oil, thanks to Cobram Estate, Australia's most awarded extra virgin olive oil, grown, harvested and first cold pressed in northern Victoria. It's now time to get to Maddie's Minute.
Well, B, it's an exciting week because we've been told that a new Australian Diamond squad is going to be announced. And I want to talk about, I would love to see a big invitee list named. We heard, obviously, Stacey Marinkovic talk about, you know, it'll probably be 18 and they can have a few invitees. But there's no major tournament this year. This is the time, it's the start of a new cycle. This is the time to really give a bit of a moment to some of those youngsters. Just bring them in for a camp or two. So I'd love to see, you know, we've talked about, and there's lots of chat about not many attackers or goal attacks and not many goal defenders out there. So why not extend that list? I think, let's talk about the squad first. I think there's probably a few ins for the squad. Mundy, Alice Teague-Neild, I think should probably be in there. She's been consistent the last couple of years. Ash Irvin, she's absolutely set the game alight for the Sunshine Coast Lightning, and also Georgie Horgis. She must be in there, absolutely. But invitees, let's expand more defenders. I think Alice, maybe a Jenna, McDonald even in there. You've got Bakewell Darwin, you've got Camo. Now's the time to give them that experience within the squad. Same with the goalers, maybe a Bachelor, a Dwan, a Wilkinson or an Austin. That group, because I think there's a bit of a gap between the Diamonds and then the next generation. Get them in there, get them exposed, get them ready right now, rather than waiting the year before Commonwealth Games going, oh, we need someone because something's happened and we haven't got him. So let's have a big invitee squad for me.
Oh, you heard it here first from Maddie. The squad is announced some stage this week. So it might be already announced by the time this goes to air, but maybe not. but can't wait to see some of the names that are in that squad. And of course, even the experienced Diamonds who continue to perform, who continues to put their hand up for that Diamonds squad. Now, let's get into our round preview, and let's start by looking at the fixture for round 9. We've got some great games coming up. It's the Swifts and the Lightning starting us off on Saturday. Then the Thunderbirds and Fever in Adelaide. Maddie, we will both be there for that game. The Giants and the Firebirds. And then in Melbourne, the classic crosstown rivalry is starting between the Vixens and the Mavericks. Now, let's hone in on the first game that I think is going to be one to watch, and that is the Thunderbirds and the West Coast Fever. Now, both teams have been in unbelievable form, yet have had a little kind of glitch on the radar where they've lost a game, a close game. The Thunderbirds, they absolutely blitzed, didn't they, against the Swifts, but then they couldn't match it with the Firebirds. So I think this is going to have so many different storylines all within one game. What end of the court dominates? Katie Ann Dehaney was super impressive up against Romelda Aitken-George last time they played. We thought Sterling Humphrey down that end against Fowler Nemard was going to be where to watch. And that, of course, so much happens down that end. But I really think what happens with Shanice Beckford out at goal attack, how much attention Tilly Garrett gives her, but also how much you can force her into those turnovers, because that's been a part of her game that we're starting to see now, that when she's under pressure, Beckford tends to throw the ball away.
Yeah, I do wonder whether that is the second half of the season for her. Like, she hasn't played this level of netball. Obviously, she's gone to world tournaments, yes, but this is a different game.
Yes.
Like, it is week in, week out. It's even at training. The week of training is hard. So, you know, I wonder whether this second half of the season she's starting to tire a little bit, and that's why those mistakes are coming.
Yeah, and the expectation. But, I mean, what a luxury it is for Dan Ryan, of course, to have Olivia Wilkinson there as well, who I think has been coming on and really playing her role superbly. So I cannot wait for this game. It is going to be intense. It's going to be physical, and both teams really want to cement their second half of the season, and it all happens in this game here.
And it has huge implications on the ladder. Fever win, they go 3 games ahead. Thunderbirds win, they probably can actually maybe hit up into that top 2 spot and ruffle some feathers up there. So it's a big, big moment for both of those teams.
And a King's birthday clash between the Vixens and the Mavericks. How do you see this one playing out?
Well, you know, you look at obviously the win and losses there for the Mavericks, and I'm sure they'd love to get a double in a row. It'd be great to see that consistency for them. The Vixens, they were at their clinical best once again against the Giants on the weekend, and only using their 7. They don't go to their bench unless they absolutely have to. They usually rotate within. This is obviously going to be a huge match, I think, you know. Hopefully a packed out stadium.
Yes. Well, it is. It's sold out, apparently, John Cain Arena.
At John Cain Arena. I mean, it's at 1 o'clock, so you can do that. And then you can go to the footy. It's a massive precinct of sport down there at Olympic Park. So I'm looking forward to that. But Al Cardwell, will she be back? How's that going to turn around for them? So a few ins and a few outs potentially for the Mavs. But yeah, I'm looking to see what they've learnt from round 1 when they played each other to what they can do now in round 9.
And don't ever underestimate the emotion that goes into this game. Both teams want to win. They want to make sure they're the team in Melbourne. So even though the Vixens have been performing, I think they've got to be very careful how much they get involved in the emotion.
Well, we've actually seen, as you said, a lot of teams have kind of gone in with maybe a little bit more complacency to some of those games that they think, oh, this might be an easier win, or we might be able to just rotate a bit more. Thunderbirds on the weekend to the Firebirds. So you've got to be on your game.
You do have to be. Now let's get to the social scoop. This week we have a question from Steph Langen. Now Steph asked, do you think both shooters in SSN need to be able to shoot the super shots? We're seeing this come up time and time again now because it's important.
Well, I say no, because you've got the rotation. So if they can't, that's fine. Absolutely dominate the 10. First 10 minutes with the 1 point and bring on that rotation for the 2-prong. I do think in the Power 5 though, Steph, you do need to have 2 options. I don't think you can have just the 1, but do the goalers that start the quarter have to be on there? Nah, but you do have to have 2 shooters that can shoot the 2 in the 5.
In the 5, yes. But if you're a shooter that can only shoot the 1s, you better be shooting high 40s and 50s in the game to really make sure your position is cemented in that side. Make sure you send us any questions that you have during the week to our socials there at the bottom of your screen right now. Send us a question. Thank you for sending that in, Steph. We love to hear from all of our viewers. Now that is Centre Court for another week, all thanks to OMF, Watch Sport Your Way, and Cobram Estate Australian Extra Virgin Olive Oil. Thanks again again, Maddie. Thanks again to all of you for watching, and we'll see you again next week.